Singaporean Dickson Yeo has been detained under the Internal Security Act for acting as a paid agent for a foreign state. Yeo was previously convicted of spying for China in the United States. For a closer look, we're joined by Associate Professor Eugene Tan from the School of Law at Singapore Management University. Good evening. Eugene, could you explain why Dickson Yeo's actions were prejudicial and warranted detention under the ISA?
Good evening, Don. I think simply put, Mr. Dickson Yeo had been assessed by the Singapore authorities to be a threat to Singapore's national security. And the question is, of course, how? And I think as the report earlier mentioned, first he entered into a clandestine relationship with the foreign government. And secondly, engaging in activities at the direction of this unnamed foreign country. And these activities were regarded as being detrimental to Singapore's national security, as well as our interests, particularly bilateral relations. And so what Mr. Yeo did, among other things, was to attempt to obtain classified information and to recruit agents, for his foreign handlers. So in a way, fairly straightforward intelligence operation, but enough to warrant concern and preventive detention would be the logical next step.
Well, authorities are clearly taking this very seriously. Give us some context, though. How rare is this case compared to most detention orders in recent years? And what does it show about the other risks, perhaps, that Singapore faces?
It's rare. I think when you look at the vast majority of ISA detentions, in the last 2 decades, particularly after 9/11 in 2001, is that many of these orders were served on terrorism suspects, as well as individuals who sought to engage in violent extremism. And if we think about ISA detention for espionage activities, I think we will need to go back perhaps slightly to more than 2 decades. I think in terms of risk, we are looking at here Singapore punching above its weight, in the international arena. Singapore's views are sought by other countries, on the geopolitics of the region. We take an active part in the international fora. We maintain relations with many countries, regardless of their political ideology. So I think it shouldn't surprise us if other countries will seek to influence Singapore, right? Particularly the direction of its foreign policy and the bilateral relations that we have. I think it comes in many respects, with the turf of being relevant, to the larger international community. And so it's something, that we have to manage, but more importantly, be guided by the fundamental principles, such as our national interests taking utmost priority, our sovereignty being a non-negotiable, and having a principled foreign policy, as well as, ensuring that we abide by the rule of law in international relations. So the risks are there, but they come very much, with Singapore, wanting to be relevant in the international arena.
So Dickson Yeo was an academic before all of this, and we understand that his PhD supervisor was Huang Jing. Now, Huang Jing was the professor who was identified as an agent of influence for a foreign country. That was back in 2017. So how susceptible are our universities to foreign influence, and what more should be done about that?
As an academic, I don't really see our universities as being particularly susceptible to foreign influence. But that doesn't mean that vigilance, is not required. I think vigilance is still essential. And in terms of, what more should be done, I think it's really, important for, people in the academic community, to be focused on, what is it that a foreign, someone who approaches them, to do research, what does that research involve? How is one directed to do that particular research? So, for example, does it involve, obtaining information which are not readily available in the public domain? Does it entail passing on information or receiving sensitive or classified information, to another party? And particularly if academics, have an influence on people in government, whether they'll be asked to, exert, that particular influence. So again, another thing could be whether an academic or research staff is being asked to recruit colleagues or students, for a particular organization whose credentials may be suspect. So I think, ultimately, that there is only so much that the rules can set in place, whether by the university or by the government. Ultimately, the academic has to ask himself or herself the question, is what I'm doing or asked to do, legitimate research and teaching, and am I keeping, to the highest ethical standards required of academics? But it's important, for us not to overreact and not to, engage in paranoia.
Professor Tan, thank you very much for sharing your views with us this evening. That was Associate Professor Eugene Tan there from the School of Law at Singapore Management University.